when it comes to data, it's really a dirty job.
It's kind of like how a smaller vacuum cleaner can get in the corners. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Humans in the Loop, our video series here at Human Managed. I'm Deborah, an intern at the Human Managed Singapore office. And today we have David, our director of Human Managed in Manila office, here with us to talk about how he deals with clients and his job at the company. Hi. So thank you for joining us today. Really looking forward to having a chat with you. So I have a few questions prepared, so I'll just get straight to it. Give us a short introduction of yourself, what your role is in the
Mm.
company, and what you do.
As a director of the Human Managed Philippines entity, I pretty much help with the operations in the Philippines. I primarily work uh, interacting with our customers. Given that we have a good base of our clients in the Philippines, I make sure that I engage with them in whatever requirements or whatever we hear and we think are needed by our customers gets translated into something that we can deliver within Human Managed.
So given that HM is a data-driven data management platform in a sense, and you're in a sales role, but I guess the sales aspect would be dealing with clients' data challenges. How has your
Mhm.
perspective on these data challenges evolved since joining Human Managed?
I think the important thing that we always have to remember with all these data projects or even when we go into AI, that advancement in technology or the things that we are trying to achieve now, you still have to tie it back to what the business needs. You have to tie it back to what problem are we solving. So, for example, data as we know it can come from different places. And if you don't have a plan of or you don't have an objective of what you want to achieve with the data that uh, you will require, you won't have a roadmap of which data will be gotten because over time data just exponentially increase, but the problems that you are solving are pretty much evolving as well. So you have to understand which data relates to the problem that you're trying to solve to be able to leverage on that using the advancement in technology right now.
So thank you for mentioning data strategies, and I think it's very interesting how you bring up that companies have so much data, right, with all the technological advancements, but what we do with the data, how they use it efficiently for their business operations is very strategic, and they have to be very intentional about it. So building on that, what trends are you seeing in how companies think about their data strategies right now?
The way I think about it is the problems that companies are solving, it may have developed, it may have changed a bit where, for example, you were dealing with a lot of security threats in on-prem environments before, or process gaps, or um, shadowed ITs where you don't have visibility of your environment. Previously, it happens within a company's premises. Now, it's still happening, but in another situation where you have a lot of SaaS applications, you have public clouds that you have access to. So companies would always have pretty much the same fundamental problems that we encounter over the years with just different characteristics or different varieties. But at the end of the day, these problems are pretty much central to how the business operates.
So given that you mentioned companies kind of have similar struggles, just different variables in those problems. How do you walk us through how you diagnose a client's real pain point versus what they initially think that their issue might be?
The way I deal with it is I am always open to the asks of the customer, very open to listening to what they want. But I always ask, why do you want it in the first place? Asking that question or trying to understand their thinking process, where, for example, they would be asking, I need a report of how many data sources I'm sending every day. But then, as an example, or as a clarifying question, I would ask them is, are you trying to monitor the current state of your data source as it happens? Or do you want a visibility of how many data sources have connected over a period of time? So when you have that level of clarification being defined, that allows you to tweak the service that you need to deliver to them to address what should really be addressed rather than just providing what they need. I always keep in mind that while I would like to address their asks directly, I would want to ensure that I also know the rationale behind it before we address that problem.
Thanks for sharing that. I think sometimes it might be difficult for customers to hear that what they initially thought was not like they're not 100% right at the start, right?
Mhm.
So in terms of telling the client what they actually need, what's a hard truth about data management that they often may not be so open to hearing at first?
When it comes to the data, it's really a dirty job. For example, I have this application. I can see in my UI that we're seeing the number of assets, the number of alerts, the number of violations or vulnerabilities for that particular device. How come you're not seeing it? That's a very, very common question that I get from the clients that I deal with. And the reality behind it is the way it gets presented by an application, it's also a different endpoint or a different behavior once that data that's being presented in that screen gets sent through a collect channel like a API or a streaming data. It's a different behavior how it's presented to the direct users in their own consoles versus it being sent to an external data platform which would have a different format. So the dirty job of data is actually understanding what's the behavior of that system or of that application and how do they present data if you want it to interact with it programmatically. Because the manner of users interacting with a console is very different from a collection agent getting the data from the system and then for us to be able to process that and apply automations, apply AI models, or apply behavioral baselining. For that to be achieved, you have to make sure that you're getting the right data in the right format at the right time. So that's the dirty job of data that not everyone will be appreciating because it's not really that easy.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who isn't trained in tech, I think when I hear like, oh, I have a data issue, why can't I just, put a software and then throw AI at it and then it just fixes my problem magically. I never thought of it as a dirty problem. But I guess you're right. There's a lot of back end work, right? And just because you think it looks a certain way doesn't mean that's what's actually going on behind the scenes. Going off script a little bit, in terms of
Mhm.
explaining this to clients, what do you think have you kind of gotten a method that works the best in communicating this effectively but also not offending them? Because if I was a client,
Mm,
maybe if you said it very direct, I might feel like, hey, are you saying I'm wrong, and that's
mm.
not a nice feeling. So how do you approach this with clients?
Um, I always tell them that while we know that data may be presented to them in a manner of a UI, a console, or a report that they're generating regularly from a system, from a security tools console, I always tell them that when it comes to looking at automating it, we cannot consider the channel of a human versus a channel of a machine. So when we look at machines, we have to think about what format a machine would be able to understand. So in that case, for us, I will tell them, okay, yes, we see that data. We need to validate if in the channel of the machine, which is an API, a collection agent, or a streaming platform, are we seeing the same things? So, say for example, I want to monitor field logins outside office hours outside the country. We have to check from a machine's endpoint, are we getting the timestamps? Are we getting field logins events? Are we getting the country details? Are we getting uh, the users who access that at particular time? So when you get that and get that validation, then you would be able to confidently say, yes, we can achieve this use case already, given that we're seeing it in the data.
So building on that, you mentioning use cases and how you so very clearly explain to them what their issue is. What would you say are like the biggest issues that you see with data management in most companies that you have to address?
One problem that I've seen quite consistently is uh, the clarity of objectives of what they want to achieve. So maybe on a executive level, they would say, "Hey, I know there's a great way to leverage on data and AI," and they will ask, "Let's implement a project that would be able to leverage on that." But then again, you think about where do you want to implement this? It's nice for us who deal with this with multiple clients. I see some customers who are trying to optimize the way they're doing security operations or monitoring. It at the end of the day, it is being applied to a business process or to a business operations that benefits the company. Another one is we have clients who right now are trying to do more efficient knowledge based management, creating project documents, case studies, business requirements, looking at historical and current available projects or current available write up. So, optimizing that process, that's a very different uh, mindset. So, the challenge has always been what do they want to achieve? What do they want to improve on? And that's when you decide which tool, which data, which models will be applicable in order to address that problem. So it's always that scoping, it's always that intent of where do we want to use this for.
Okay, so you have very clearly laid out how we try to help clients with problems. You know, what are the problems that we see often? What are some barriers, I guess, that clients may experience when trying to diagnose their issues? So, what makes our approach different from the enterprise software companies projects usually deal with? Because there's so many other like softwares you could try, I guess. What makes us different?
Given the history of HM where we've started this journey back in as early as 2019, we had that platform vision. 2020, we started collecting data sources. So we've gone through the journey, we've gone through the birth pains of uh, getting data, getting to understand what data presents, what visibility of data. And I think I've gained the confidence over the years that within HM, I can confidently say we can work with any data source that clients would have. I've seen us work directly integrate with systems, whether it's on-prem or cloud. I've seen us collect from manual reports or manual Excel, CSVs, tables. I've seen us parse from emails. Recently, I've seen parsing from PDF documents. So, whether it's a structured data or unstructured data, we have gone through that hard part of managing, uh, collecting, transforming, cleaning up, wrangling data, putting it together. So that I think separates us from a lot of the software companies where you are very limited into what they are capable to integrate with. And given our size, I think the fact that we're relatively small compared to other enterprises, that allows us to be more agile and to be able to address the needs of our customers if it somehow is not very standard. Bigger global companies would have, very strict processes or very bureaucratic process of approvals and change processes internally, where we have a slightly less, I guess, layers of approvals, layers of um, processes, but at the same time, we still maintain that security, that controls, uh, and balancing it with the agility to be able to address the needs of our customers.
Thank you for enlightening us on how Human Manage kind of takes a very unique approach and leverages on our small, lean company size, I guess, which is not a bad thing, to be able to kind of like, it's kind of like how a smaller vacuum cleaner can get in the corners of a room,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, I
Yes.
just thought of that analogy. Sometimes when you're smaller, you can, the way you deploy is a little bit more flexible. Um,
Mm.
so this all sounds amazing, and it is amazing as somebody who sees what goes on. So what is something we've built recently that you're most excited to talk about with prospects?
Very satisfying to see um, actual models implemented. I think the most satisfaction that I'm getting is when the same solutions or the same use cases or models are actually being used across multiple customers without the need to change much. So, example, we've deployed a lot of Sigma rules. These are rules that monitor activities that are happening with a user, with a device, um, and we can look at different systems. The triggers or the conditions are the same. If a device connects to this and at this certain time, at this certain location, alert us. One customer would have a brand A as their data source, and then another customer would have a separate brand to send to us. And that Sigma rule or that use case is actually applicable to both. But then you expand that further. That's a simple and most customers would say, hey, that's what a SIEM does. But I think the beauty with human managed is the replicability doesn't stop there because we have done and structured our platform to be so modular. So now you would have AI models, you would have machine learning models that think of that rule that was configured in two data sources generating the same alert. So if you have more advanced complex use cases, so in some use cases we are doing say uh, baselining for the past 6 months of what a normal behavior is for a device and a user. If that user is an IT specific system or that data comes from an IT specific system, we can also put in a customer transaction or a sales transaction system to that same model, to that same pipeline, and then you'll be able to achieve the same thing because at the end of the day, we have separated how we process stuff versus what data that processing deals with and be able to generate the output. So that has been very something that I'm very proud of because uh, a model that we have been using for cybersecurity over the years is something that we can use with a digital use case or a fraud use case. And if you think about it, you can even look at other data sets and the possibilities are endless. It's a matter of where do you want to apply, what data will you present to it to be able to generate the uh, objective that you want.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds very exciting. It's kind of like a template that you can apply to different use cases. If is that am I understanding it right? Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it sounds not only efficient, but the use cases are replicable. So I really look forward to seeing that in action. Just to wrap up, thank you so much for making time to talk to me today. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. So to those watching, thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed it, stay tuned for more, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.